Okay, so the first thing on the last exam is going to be the terms, the second page of terms. Hostage tactic, holding something of value until demands are met. One last thing that you're not going to give in on. Iceberg theory, trying to appear as attractive and polished on the surface. You want to be cool in a negotiation. You don't want to lose your cool. But I've heard it described also like the duck on the water. If you look at the duck, they're real calm, but what's happening under the water? His legs can be turning really, really hard, but you want to appear really smooth and polished. Crunch tactic, you got to do better. Limited authority, we talked a lot about that, and rightly so. If a person has limited authority, it can allow them to say no gracefully, but it also can bring your opponent to a point where you know exactly where they're at, and then you're able to go back and go, well, I can't really do this without checking with my manager, checking with whoever first. Missing person, and this is kind of an aggravating tactic. Person with final authority disappears when the agreement's reached, and it kind of extends it out. Nibbling, I've talked about this before, asking for small concessions that are insignificant to the scope of the whole deal. You guys go in to buy your suits to get ready for your job, and you're buying 3 suits from the men's warehouse, ask for a tie, socks, whatever. They'll throw in something because it's insignificant to the total amount of the deal. Piece by piece tactic. When there's distrust, it says try to take smaller things first, settle on some things you can get agreement, then build towards the bigger issues. Power and legitimacy, very important thing. Credibility given to a price of an item because it previously stated as that selling price. Why do goods in our stores have prices stamped on them? You guys ever been to the Bahamas?
So people don't like try to barter.
Yeah. In the Bahamas, is there a price on anything when you go in the store? In like the markets and all? Why don't they put a price on there? Yeah, it's culture. It's negotiable. But what happens when somebody pops a price on there? What's our mindset? That's what the price is.
Well, in Guatemala, in the markets, you go, and you'll ask for the price, and they'll give it to you, and then if you look hesitant, and they're like, but there's always a discount. So.
Well, and I love stores now, and especially you've got to watch, that are offering discounts. Okay? If they're offering a discount, what's that tell you about the original price? It's higher. Or when Publix does a BOGO, what's that tell you about the margins on the product they're selling that they can give you one for free? Yeah, are they losing money when they do that? No. So everything's relative to the out-the-door price, and that's what later in the week or next week we're going to talk about cars. I'm going to give you guys a lot of good information about out-the-door pricing, which is the main thing you're worried about, because if you're not careful, you'll agree on a price, but then you got the tag, and you got the tax, which you can't avoid, but then you got this thing called a dealer fee that they tack on also. So all of a sudden this price you agreed on, your walk out the door is about $2,500 more, and that's what's relative to you. That's relative. That's what gets apples to apples. So power legitimacy, why would you go in a used car place? Do they have a price stamped on the window? Because they want you to think that that's the price. Even new cars come out with MSRP. That's not what you should pay. That's the manufacturer's, what's the S in MSRP? Suggested retail price. Scrambled eggs tactic, try to mix up information to confuse the opponent, and you can see how well your opponent handles pressure. A shill, this is one that real estate agents use. You got to be careful for this. You're going to, you have an appointment with a realtor to go look at a house, and so they have one of their realtor buddies have somebody there right before you get there, and they're leaving right as you're getting there, and you go and look at the house, and so then the realtor calls you and goes, oh yeah, that person that was here before you is going to make an offer, so if you want to make an offer, you better go ahead and get one in. Okay, that's called a shill. And don't think that people don't do that. And my answer to that is, well, then let them have it. Unless it's an incredibly, incredibly good deal, I'm not going to be rushed into do anything or pressured into making a deal. But that's the whole point of doing that, is trying to get you to make a deal. Snow job, giving the opponent so much information, they become bogged down, and that's what happens. I think we've talked about this term with lawyers. If they ask for discovery, they'll send over 20 boxes of stuff, and then there's one piece of paper somewhere in those 20 boxes of actually what they asked for. And then the last is what if, using hypothetical situations to gain information from your opponent. Once again, don't play the game. What if I were to do this? And my response would be, are you saying you'll do that? Okay, I'm not going to play a what if game. Why?
Well, I had a question about it.
Okay, go ahead.
It was going to be with the missing persons maneuver. When would you use that? Like, what do you gain from that?
I've seen it happen. I've had it happen to me at car dealerships, and I don't know the answer. That's a good question. What do you gain from doing that? But also, they can't find the district sales manager or the sales manager that's got to approve the final deal. It could be trying to kick it to a later date, but if I'm in that situation, then I'm going to be aggravated, and I'm going to consider, unless it's something I really got to have, it's going to do nothing but aggravate me. All right, so the what if, once again, what happens when if you answer that question? Yeah, you've locked yourself in.
I was going to say, you're giving away information.
Exactly. You're saying, yes, I would do it if you were to offer me that, so then you give them information to no one. So once again, are you offering me that? Don't skip the hypotheticals. What's your offer? Go ahead and tell me what it is, and then I'll make a decision based on that. All right, so next thing, let's talk about the exploding offer. And I've mentioned this, I think, earlier, and this is when somebody says, okay, I'm going to do this deal for you, but I got to know something by Friday. It's Tuesday now, you got to let me know by Friday whether you want to rent this apartment for this price, but after Friday, the deal goes away. So what are they trying to do? Yeah, trying to force you into making a decision, and without giving you time to look at alternatives. So here's the characteristics of the exploding offer. Power asymmetry. What that means is one party has more power than the other, and that's the party offering the deal. They have more power than you do. Second thing, pressure-inducing test of faith. It's great pressure placed on the party receiving the offer, because if it's a valid offer and you're seriously considering it, you don't want to lose it. But then again, if I'm not totally sold, I want to check on alternatives. And they're trying to stop you from having the time to do that. Restricting choice. Limit your ability to seek other options. Lack of consideration and respect. It puts a hardship on the party receiving the offer. And then a lack of good faith. The person making the offer seems not to care about the other party. So those are all, but once again, one question I would ask myself, is there a legit reason why they're doing that? And there are situations, and I think I mentioned it, you guys are interviewing for a job, and come May, and they're going to want you to start on June 1st, and the job fair is going to be in end of January, 1st of February, and so by March 31st, they need an answer whether you're going to come or not. Now, are they trying to pressure you, or could that be legit? Why legit?
Any time to process paperwork, set up email account.
Okay, but what happens if you don't come? They got to find somebody else. That's exactly right. So there are times when that offer, but like for a car, and I had it happen to me, okay, I'll do it, but you got to do it by 5 o'clock today. There's no reason if you're going to sell me that car today, you shouldn't sell it to me for the same price tomorrow. They're just trying to force you, and I generally don't deal with people that try to do that.
Would that be the same as the case where colleges and like early admission contracts?
Yep, exactly. What are they trying to do?
Kind of like seal the deal ahead of time?
Yep, and which students are they doing that with?
The really serious students?
Yeah, highly competitive, the 1,1500 SAT students. I didn't get one of those offers. Okay, but the people that are, they want them, and what are they doing? And a lot of times, okay, if you sign by this date, we'll waive out-of-state tuition. Right? So they're making it, they're putting pressure, but it's because it's selfish on their part also. They want you there for a reason. Exactly. And that's why that early signing period. Because they want to get it locked in or shut, and those are highly, generally, the measurable, what's the measurable for students? If a college says, we have the top students, what's one? There's really only two measurables. GPA, standardized test score. So like if you want to get into the Stanford MBA program, they will advertise, I think it's 700, that our average person has a 700 GMAT score. Okay, that's extremely high. That's very, very good. Much higher than most schools would have you get in, but that's how they differentiate people. All right, so then breaking that, trying to break the pressure, trying to make you make a decision is called the far point gambit. Okay, that's just a name for it in academia. And so it says there's three things that you need to know and make it okay to break the decision, to try to break this. The other side is perceived by the recipient of the exploding offer to be behaving unethically and does not respond to appeals or reasons. So if that's the case, then yeah, you want to try to buy more time. Number two, recipient is truly interested in making the deal but needs more time to make a decision. You guys are interviewing and you've got an offer and you interview Tuesday and they say you want to know something by Friday. Is that realistic in a lot of your cases? Moving, you know, questions that got to be asked, and that kind of ties into the third. There are genuinely issues that need clarification, which would make the difference between accepting and rejecting the deal. How about your kid's school at some point? How about my spouse's relocation and their ability to get a job? There's a lot of things that figure into, you guys right now, it's fairly simple. You know, can I move there? Can I find a place to live? What if you're, and I know some girls that took jobs, some young ladies in my class that took jobs with Macy's as buyers in New York, salary $44,000. What are you going to need to know before you accept that job? Living costs. Yeah, and can I find roommates? Because you're not going to be able to live by yourself in that situation just because of the cost. So are there places where I can find roommates? You're going to have to live in Brooklyn. What about the subway cost? And then I would want time to go through and do a budget and prepare it so I could make sure I was going to be able to live comfortably. So there's a lot in those questions. You need to try to buy time and break the gambit. Okay, but in the situation where I know this company that's wanting to hire me has to have 5 people in their training class by June, that's legitimate for them to say, hey, look, I've got to know something by March 31st. And so what happens if you have another job that you really want more and you don't have that interview for 2 weeks and it's past the deadline, you're supposed to let that company know something? Is it unethical to accept a job knowing there's a chance you might leave?
Ethics is a gray line.
It's a gray area because you might take the job, right? But what happens if you're honest in that situation? What do you think is going to happen?
They won't want you too much.
Well, they might appreciate it, but they might let you go too.
Well, what's their bottom line?
Get something.
They got to have people. Right. So if you go, oh yeah, I'll take this, but I got another interview in 2 weeks, and if that comes through, I'm going to back out. You're probably not going to get the job. And that's just things that, I mean, those are good problems to have. Those are, as my friend would say, first world problems. Okay, which job should I accept? So hopefully you get in that situation where you have choices, but then you can navigate your way through it also. Possibly leverage if one you want, the other one's paying more. You know, hey, I really want to stay with you guys, but I got this offer on the table. Don't be demanding, don't be threatening, but just ask, is there any way you could close the gap? Is there anything we're doing that? But also, keep in mind that you need to be willing to take that other job if you're going to try to leverage it like that. Because and I would never advise anybody to don't ever negotiate yourself out of a job. But I also think it doesn't hurt to ask. And just say, hey, I've got this offer. Is there any way you could close the gap a little bit because I really like you guys more? And just say, what's the worst thing that happens? Say something. All right, so let's go through chapter 12 now on multiple groups and teams. All right, so when groups and teams are involved, the whole negotiation changes. Now, actually, I don't think I brought it with me, but there's been all kinds of research of what happens when groups and teams negotiate. All right, so what's the differences between two-party and multi-party? The number of parties, information about computational complexity, and then we're going to talk about these other social complexity, procedural complexity, and strategic complexity. Procedural being getting through the steps, social being more than one party involved, and then strategic, the whole planning involved. All right, so effective groups and their members. Once again, a slide like this you don't need to know for exam. Test assumptions, share all relevant information, focus on interests, not positions, explain reasons, talk in specific terms, agree on what's important, on what important words mean, disagree openly with any member of the group, and make statements and invite questions and comments. And I'm going to come back in another slide about disagreeing openly with a member of the group. design ways to test solutions, discuss undiscussable issues, keep discussions focused, avoid taking cheap shots, expect participation by all members, exchange relevant information, make decisions by conscience, and conduct self-critiques. All right, so there's stages, and so I'm going to put this in context with a situation I had. A friend of mine was the head of Children and Family Services for the state of Florida. He was appointed by Governor Scott. So in my past, I have worked with foster kids, and so my friend, Mr. Wilkins, asked me to serve on a statewide board. It was called the ILSAC, the Independent Living Services Advisory Council, and it was a state board, and he asked me not only to serve, but be chairman. So I was responsible for running these committee meetings. There were people from all over the state of Florida who had worked with foster children involved. So our goal was to come up with policies and procedures for the state of Florida which would help foster kids transition through life more smoothly. Okay, so do you think we're opposing or conflicting values in that group? Yeah, why? Main reason because money was involved. All right, if you don't know how the state does their foster kid program, they pay families to take foster kids. They also pay agencies. The state outsources part of their foster care to, they're called CBC, Community-Based Care Agencies. And those agencies get paid based on the amount of kids they have in their jurisdiction. So here was one of the main sticking points of the committee that we had. If a kid is from West Palm and that student then travels to Tallahassee to enroll in college, should their domicile be West Palm or Tallahassee? What do you guys think?
Given their tax status, if they're dependent on their parents, they should stay with them.
But these are foster kids, so most of these are independent. Most of them are independent. What's the problem if the domicile's in West Palm?
Well, parents are getting paid to not take care of them.
Well, and the CBC in Tallahassee is now
Responsible for them, and they're not getting paid.
exactly. So you see how there was so the places that had Gainesville, Tallahassee, those places that had major universities, all wanted to transfer the funds. All the bigger cities where kids leave to go to college didn't want to transfer the funds, and that was one of the big sticking points because you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that based on what the committee recommends. Now, we were only a recommending body. The legislature then had to pass it. But going through the process was very eye-opening for me because I'm not a political person. I was just, and the good thing about having me chairman, all I cared about was the best interest of the kids. I didn't care about, I wasn't getting paid. I didn't care about where the money went. I just wanted the kids taken good care of. So there's stages that you go through. The pre-negotiation stage, meeting informal contacts among the parties. Anybody know what the problem with that is if you are on a state board like I was on? You guys ever heard of the Sunshine Law? What does it mean?
Everything has to be transparent.
It means if I wanted to have a conversation with one of the other members of that board, I had to make a public pronouncement of it and state the time and place that we were going to meet. Because it's all public knowledge, anything that's state like that. So informally, I was not allowed to talk to committee members without posting and inviting the public to be there. So does that kind of restrict what you can do? Yeah, now, there were also lobbyists involved that could talk to people because they weren't actually on the panel. But anybody on the panel, Sunshine Law, state of Florida says that you have to disclose time and meeting places.
Wouldn't that Sunshine Law be more of a security measure to make sure I did not make weddings or?
Well, and more collusion also. More the fact that they don't want people getting together and basically having the votes together before the whole process takes place.
Yeah.
And I can argue, once again, almost any law that's meant for really good, there's some really bad stuff to it too, because it really restricted me being able to get key information that I needed on an informal basis.
Yeah.
Okay? But it's the same thing. They passed a law a while back that purchasing agents for the state had to get sealed bids and take the lowest bid Okay, well, what was their intent of doing that? Protect the taxpayer dollars, right? We don't want to be paying more to your buddy that you want to do business with. Well, is the cheapest bid always the best bid? No, there's companies that will bid, and my buddy who was head of DCF knew in a couple of contracts, he goes, I knew they couldn't do it because he was a consultant. He knew there's no way with what they bid they could provide the services they had said they were going to provide. So the lowest bid isn't always the best, but in the lawmaker's mind, that law made sense because people were paying their buddies enormous contracts and channeling where state money went. So there's two sides usually to everything that you got to be aware of. All right, so then the formal negotiation stage structures a group discussion, and that's the actual meetings that we had. And the agreement phase is when we come through all the alternatives, we actually select what we were going to do. All right, so in the pre-negotiation, figure out who the participants, who's going to be on the panel, form coalitions, define group member roles, understand the cost and consequences of no agreement, and then learn the issues and construct the agenda. And very fortunately for me, Mr. Wilkins' staff was able to put the agenda together, so a lot of work was done before we got there, which is very helpful to me. Okay, also, pre-negotiation stage. Establish what issues we're going to talk about, define how each issue is discussed, set the order, priority, and then introduce the processes that you're going to go through, and then that last one's very important. Time limits to various items. What happens if you don't have time limits? If you guys, with your social groups that you're in, have meeting agenda that you got to go through, what happens if you don't have a time limit, and when you reach that time limit, you move on? You can go, and one issue may take up 90% of the meeting, and you may not get any other business handled. So it's very important. And so what happens if it's a very hot topic issue, and you really need to spend more time on it? What would you do?
Announce it beforehand.
Okay, announce it beforehand. But what happens if you just figure out in the meeting that, man, this is going to need more time?
We'll probably table it, bring it up at another time when you
Have another meeting and allow more time. Right. Have everybody get their stuff together. You guys figure it out, and we're going to have a special meeting just on this one topic. Okay? The danger of going over is then if your agenda's good, you're not going to get to all the other items that are also of importance. All right, so then we go through the formal stage, appoint a chair, which I was appointed chair, use the agenda, and get diversity of information and perspectives. And so these are just some kind of common sense. If you guys have had the business communication, hopefully you were told this. Collect thoughts and composure before speaking. Know what you're going to say. Don't just blurt out something. Understand the other person's position, and we talked about that. Try to understand why they're wanting what they're wanting. How can we have a win-win, an integrated negotiation? How important is the issue? And then we had a 2-year commitment, so there was, if you make enemies in this deal, then nothing's going to get done. And you guys see that in Washington, D.C. right now? What's happening with it, and it's going to be a negotiation, but the president has made enemies, you know, very publicly, and what's happening now to those people and their votes?
Well, just today, he was supposed to have a meeting with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi over the tax plan, but he tweeted this morning saying that he didn't see a deal happening, so they canceled the meeting.
Well, his own party's the one that's blocking it. And the senators in his own party, pretty much all of them, that are not voting for this tax plan are people that he has insulted personally. Okay? Guys, that's a really important lesson. I mean, he's a real smart guy, made a lot of money and been very successful. But in that business he's in now, if you publicly humiliate somebody, what are your chances? Or if me, in this meeting, if I publicly humiliated one of the members, am I going to get consensus? Not only am I not going to get consensus, what are they going to do now? They're going to start working against you and start undermining everything that you do. And 2 of the members now that are against the president have both announced they're not running for re-election. So there's no consequence for them. They're out. They're not. They don't have to be. They're not held accountable to the public anymore. So it's. You guys understand the importance of relationships and how you treat people and getting stuff done. I mean, hopefully you do, because you can't do it, especially in a big group like that. You can't do it by yourself. You've got to have supportive people. All right, so also during the formal stage, consider all available information. So one of the things you do, and I think we did this, is called the Delphi technique. It's an initial questionnaire sent to all parties, just kind of gathering some initial information. Brainstorming is defining a problem and generate as many solutions. So very important, and I want to go through the difference in brainstorming and nominal group. What's the purpose of brainstorming? You guys have all done that. What's the purpose of brainstorming?
It's like rapid idea generation.
Idea generation. Is it a problem-solving tool itself? No, it's one part of a problem-solving tool. Nominal group is a problem-solving tool. It is where you brainstorm and then you have everybody vote on their top 4 that come out of the brainstorming. Then you discuss those 4. Then you come back and take another vote. And the reason for the votes is to give, and it needs to be a private vote. Stay away in groups, guys. Stay away from peer pressure. Stay away from having people raise their hand and vote. There's a lot of people that, you guys will see this, there's people at work that you're not going to want to get on their bad side, and if you disagree with them and you raise their hand publicly in front of them, they can make life rough on you. So that's why I like nominal group. It's a private vote, but once again, brainstorming is not a problem-solving tool. It's one step. It's idea generation. Okay? Nominal group is a problem-solving tool. All right, so formal negotiation stage. Let me see that. My notes are down there. All right, so now in the formal, we've gone through that. All right, so then formal negotiation stage. Manage conflict effectively, review and manage decision rules, try to get a tentative first agreement, and then, very important here, managing problem team members. Okay? Are there going to be people that are not happy with what goes on? You call them out in the middle of the meeting? Nah, not a good idea. So be specific about problem behavior, okay? Not just general, you've got to be very specific. Describe problems as we, okay? Very important. If you ever hear me talk about my business, most of the time you will hear me say, we did this. Why do I say we? I own the company, it was 100% mine. Why do I say we?
Single yourself out.
Did I do it by myself? Did I have team members and crew members that were critically important? My wife is my bookkeeper and community relations person. Yeah, it was a group effort. And what happens when we say we?
They feel like they're part of it, so they're more likely to do it.
Exactly. And the same thing, coaches and managers that say we. We've got to do a better job. So you're not criticizing your people when you do that. Focus on behaviors that you can control. Okay? Very important. Wait to give constructive criticism. When you criticize somebody, pull them aside in private after the meeting and just go, look, the behavior you exhibited in there is not going to be tolerated. If you have a problem, please come see me, but please refrain from outbursts in the future. I'm going to ask you to leave the meeting. Keep feedback professional. Okay, not personal, professional, specific to the point, and then verify that the other has heard and understood. Very important concept here. What's the only way that you can know if somebody understands what you told them? What do you have them do?
Recall it.
Repeat it back to me. Okay, if I say, okay, we're going to do this, and you're going to have to report to me by the 5th at noon, and you say, and I say, do you understand? Yeah.
14th.
Okay, but if you say the 14th at noon, I know at least for now you understand that. All right, and this is a good parenting skill too. You guys, I told you to be out here at 11 o'clock and meet you. No, you said 11:30, so that's why before you leave the house, go, okay, now where are you supposed to be and at what time and exactly what spot are you supposed to be at? Have them repeat it back to you. That's the only way you know if people understand it. All right, then the last phase, come up with the best solution, get your action plan, implement the action plan, and then always evaluate it. And once again, in this step, we came up with a recommendation. It's then sent to people in the legislature who then would have to pass law because there was no legal binding authority from this committee. had to go through the channels, but it was just a kind of, it was set up by the legislature to do work for the legislature, to actually work on the plan for kids. All right, so the agreement phase, group of chairs steps in, moving towards completion. So you kind of try to steer it if you can, shape and draft a tentative agreement. What are we going to need to put it in place? Thank the group for their participation. It was great. The lady that did the agenda for me had the script on there, and always she had thank the participants for their involvement in there. So she made sure that I was on cue to do that, which was very nice. And organize and facilitate the post-mortem meeting. When do we meet again? When do we follow up? Etc. All right, so that's it on groups and teams. And you guys, once again, you're going to have some, in your associations and even informal work groups, you're going to have dealing with big groups and teams. And it's very important that you manage, I think, the personalities in the process as much as the issues. Matter of fact, I would say more.
Earlier at the beginning of the slides, it said form a coalition. Can you elaborate what that means?
Yeah, okay, so there's 3 types of coalitions, and I think it's in, when we go over chapter 12, I think it's in there. I want to gather people with me that have the same idea as I do, right? So I'm going to try to, in like that first meeting, what was I doing? I was trying to pick out people that I felt like would be on my side. Now, what other coalitions are there going to be? There's ones that are with you, ones that are against you, ones that, and I knew who they were. The big city CBCs were the ones who were totally against what I was doing because it was going to take money from them and move them. It was going to be transient with the kids as they relocated. So there's coalitions that are for you, coalitions that are against you, and then there's people who are what you would call undefined, basically could go either way. So what are you trying to do with those people? Try to sell them to get involved in your coalition. And that's once again, the power of numbers. And you guys, even in work, you think it's ever okay to go over your boss's head to their boss?
Only if your boss is doing something like illegal.
I think it depends.
But okay, so your boss is doing something, so obviously you can't go to your boss because your boss is the problem. What's the downside, Zach, of going over your boss's head?
Oh, you're going to get fired.
It's a possibility.
But I mean, if it's worth it to you.
Well, so go back to the coalition thing. There's been 2 examples that I was involved in a workplace situation where the boss was the problem. And if any of us had tried to take that on by ourselves, we would not have been successful. But in 2 situations, we were successful in getting the boss removed because there's strength in numbers. At some point, is it easier to replace one boss than a whole workforce? Yeah, especially what happens, what's the thing about numbers in the coalition? Credibility. Okay? It's not just me that feels this way. If it's a one-on-one, your boss's boss, who appointed your boss? Their boss. So where should their loyalty reside? With their person. If my boss doesn't back me, I don't want to work in that situation. If I know my boss doesn't have my back, you're in a real bad situation if your boss doesn't have your back. But if you're the problem and people go around you, then if one person goes around, that boss is going to give probably the benefit of the doubt to their person. But if you got 5 or 6 people, it becomes a different story.
Yeah, and this would all be informal, right?
Yes. Yeah, you got to be careful. And yeah, those are informal. But the same thing, in you guys' work groups, you're going to have these informal coalitions and you want to be in the one that has the power. Do you think there's power that kind of happens in lower levels in an organization? And there's leadership that happens? Yeah, I want to be in the one that's in the know and the one that has the ear of the boss, the one that's visible. We talked about that a little bit. That's where you want to be in. You want to be in with the people that are the movers and shakers. And that's about managing relationships. And I don't like the term, but it's relevant. Playing the game. Versus, being totally honest or whatever. But, you should be. But you got to play the game. And that requires some maneuvering sometimes. All right. Very good. See you guys on Thursday.